Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since we've seen each other, and since we have last seen each other the world has gone up in flames. Now let me preface this video by saying I am not going to delve very deep into the matter of the COVID pandemic because I feel like it's not my place to talk about something that I don't really know much about, in the sense that I am not a virologist, epidemiologist, economist, or any of those other ists that would have authority to talk on this matter with more, details and with more information for you, with more facts. I don't really have much more facts other than what you can find on the website of the World Health Organization, which I would advise you to do and not get caught up in newspaper titles or numbers that are being reported. I can tell you a few thoughts that I have just for myself, but that's pretty much all that I'm going to limit it to. The current status in the Netherlands is we are not on full-on lockdown. However, we have been sent to work from home if we work in a non-essential sector, so everyone who works in healthcare or in logistics, stuff that needs to keep the country going, is still going to work. Everyone else is working from home. Daycares and schools are closed. Pretty much most stores, cafes and restaurants are closed, although I heard some are still open for whatever reason, although the Prime Minister said that they should all close down. And we are probably going to be in this situation until the end of April. I don't know whether they're going to extend it much beyond April. And the reason I don't know if they're going to extend it is because at some point the world needs to continue going, because otherwise our economy is going to go into a much bigger crash than it's already headed to now. Let me tell you personally, I'm not worried for myself for getting the virus because I am not in a high-risk group, and I know that you're going to probably come at me with all those numbers that are being reported daily. The one thing that I'm going to say is please do not get caught up in the numbers, because the numbers that are being reported are just based on who has been tested, and the number of people who have been tested is far less than the actual number of people who have been infected by it. So do not get caught up in the numbers. Those are going to change dramatically once this blows over and they have some sort of a, I don't know, model where they extrapolate everything and they're able to tell how many more people were actually infected by the virus. Final thing I wanted to say is that the reason we are doing all of this, staying at home, is not so much to protect ourselves from getting sick unless we are in a risk group, but it has much more to do with the fact that healthcare systems cannot handle if all of us get sick at the same time. Then they're going to crash, and we are just trying to sort of like spread everything out in time so that the healthcare system can handle it, and there is someone there to take care of us, because also healthcare professionals need to be healthy for that. So I understand all of that. That's why I'm staying at home. I'm more worried about all the other people who cannot handle the virus because they are, elderly, immunocompromised, or any of the other, higher risk factors that they have. So I hope that my parents are going to be okay, because they are a high risk group, especially my father, who recently had pneumonia. He really needs to take care that he doesn't get sick. So I'm just following the guidelines of my country, the country that I live in. You should follow the guidelines in the country that you live in. And that is pretty much where I'm going to leave it. I don't want to ramble about it for too long, because I want you to actually be distracted a little bit from what's going on around the world. So just join me on this super sunny afternoon to make a comparison between Zoeva brushes and the two luxury brands of brushes that I own, which are M-Brush and Sonia G. I only have two brushes from Sonia G, but I'm going to feature both of them in this video, and you're going to see the two categories of brushes in action. I was honestly mostly curious to do this exercise for myself, because ever since I started buying more luxury brushes, I've been wondering whether they're really that much better compared to my Zoeva brushes, and let's find out together. I have about 4 to 5 brushes on each side, because that is the average amount of brushes that I used to create looks. Honestly, on a daily basis I use like 3, max 4 brushes to create a look. The palette that I'm going to go into is the Natasha Denona Gold palette, because I'm cheating a little bit. I want to do one of my Project 5 wears looks, so I'm going to sort of combine the two. So we're going to do this look together, and I'm going to do on this eye the expensive brushes, so my M brushes and the two Sonia G brushes that I have, and on my right eye I'm going to do a look with my Zoeva brushes. I'm just about as curious about this experiment as you are, because I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I've been curious about it and I thought maybe I can film it and see how I feel about it and let you guys know, because I feel you're going to be very interested in this too. Anyway, so the brush that I'm going to start my look off is the type of brush that I always start my looks off with, and that is a fluffy blending brush. As you can see, these brushes are pretty much identical in terms of their shape and size. The Zoeva brush is just a little bit longer. So on my fancy side of brushes, I'm going to use the number 11 from M brush, and from Zoeva I'm going to go into the 228 brush. I'm going to start off with this lighter brown over here, and I'm just going to start blending that through the crease and above, and I'm going to start with the Luxe brush. So just applying that in the outer corner and then slowly bringing that upwards. I'm just going to let you know as I go along how I feel about the comparison between each type of brush, because I might forget things if I leave everything to the end. So we're just going to take it one step at a time. This isn't really ever a part that I have a problem with, but yeah, as you can see so far, this blended out beautifully. Now I'm going to take the Zoeva brush, same eyeshadow, and we're going to repeat the process on this side and see whether there is a difference. Okay, so far the only difference, like minor difference that I can feel, is that the M brush is a little bit softer. Okay, now I'm holding both brushes and I'm doing a similar motion. Yes, this definitely feels so much softer. So much softer. In terms of a blend though, they perform pretty equally. Alright, now I'm going to go into the next step, which is going to be the interesting step, because we're going to go into the deep shade. I'm going to use this really dark teal blue shade to deepen up my outer corners. The next step, I'm going to take the other two brushes that I consider to be somewhat similar in their function for me, and those are the M brush number 12 and the 224 from Zoeva. You can tell very clearly that the two have a slightly different shape, because this one has somewhat like of a pinched end and this one is still a bit more tapered. But what I use them for is essentially the same thing. I apply more concentratedly color in my outer corner and then I blend it out through the crease. The reason I love these brushes especially for this is because they are considerably smaller when you compare them to a standard blending brush, as you can see here with the two M brushes. This one is so much bigger than this one, and this one just has a little bit of a taper to it, so it fits very snug into the outer corner. So let's see how these two brushes perform against each other. We're going to start once again with the fancy brush, and we're really going to put it to the test because I find the deep teal shade in this palette to be a little bit difficult to work with. Alright, I'm going to just start building that up here in the outer corner. Like I said, this eyeshadow is not the easiest to work with, so this is really going to put these two brushes up to the test. Now, I'm trying to build up a little bit of an outer corner here, and then blending it just slightly upwards, and then also outwards. Now, I cleaned off my brush a little bit because I don't want too much pigment on it as I blend. I just want to pull this shape a bit out, and then through my crease the tiniest bit. This brush has a very nice pointed tip to it, and normally it applies shadows really well. Like I said, this deep teal shade tends to be a little bit problematic for me personally, which is why I think this is going to be a real test. Now, I'm going to take the Zoeva brush, go into the same eyeshadow and try to achieve basically the same. Interesting, I feel like this brush is actually applying the deeper shade better than the M brush. It might be that just due to the different shape and the formula being a little bit trickier. Is it just me, or I feel like the Zoeva brush is actually outperforming the M brush here? I think it applied the color much more smoothly, whereas here there's a little bit more skipping. Now that could be just due to the differences in their shapes, like I said, but I'm definitely feeling like the Zoeva brush is, right as of now, outperforming the M brush. Now, frankly speaking, in my day-to-day life, I probably wouldn't go through the trouble of adding an extra brush to the equation in order to deepen up even more, but because I want to be as thorough as possible and I want to include a much more like pencil type of crease brush, I am going to include these next two brushes. They're not pencil brushes, but they are somewhat sturdier crease brushes. So on my looks side, I have the Sonia G Crease Pro brush, and on the Zoeva side, I have the 231 Luxe Petit Crease brush, which looks like this. I feel like they're quite similar. The Sonia G brush feels a little bit fluffier and more tapered, and this one feels a little bit more losing hairs, and this one is just a little bit thinner and smaller, but they are the two most comparable brushes that I have in this category. So let's go ahead and start off with the Sonia G brush and try to apply color here in the outer corner. This is a really pleasant brush to work with. I mentioned it also in my first impressions video, and I've been using this brush a lot since I got it. I feel like this deposited color really well. On the Zoeva side, this deposits color really well too. Okay, let's see. Yeah, as usual, the look side is much softer compared to the Zoeva side. I'm going to put down a layer of glitter glue as usual. Now I do see that I have a little bit more fallout on this side, just in case that was something that might bother you. It's possible that the small crease brush from Zoeva had a little bit more fallout. Now we're going to mix up all the brushes, because apparently that's what we're doing now. For this next step, I'm going to apply my eyeshadow on the lid, and I'm going to use a shader brush for that, which is not something I do often, so I expect to be disappointed. But I'm going to take my Sonia G Builder Pro on my looks side and the Zoeva 234 Luxe Smoke Shader on the right side. And I'm just going to apply eyeshadow as I normally would with these types of eyeshadows. I'm going to take this gold shade and sort of start stamping it onto the lid. This is applying quite nicely. Although I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I would much rather use my fingers. I think it would look prettier with my fingers. Now I'm going to flip the brush slightly, and I'm going to apply this shade here, the duochrome type of shade, in the center of my lids, using the same type of pressing motions. This is a very flaky shade, so it's a real testament to how good this brush is, that it is picking it up really well with very little fallout, as you can see. But I always feel like my fingers perform better, but just for you I'm using shader brushes. Okay, on my right eye I'm going to take the Zoeva brush and do the same. And let's see, I'm very curious how the Zoeva brush will perform here. Performing pretty okay, actually. Dipping into the flaky duochrome and gonna do the same. Maybe the tiniest bit more fallout on this side, but like the tiniest. Going to blend just the tiniest bit with the smaller crease type of brush. Man, I really like this brush better than the M brush. It's even softer than the M brush. True story. Let me flick away some of that fallout. For my inner corner and lower lash lines, I tend to use these sort of small, precise brushes. They're like a shader brush, but much smaller. On my right side I have the number 20 from M brush, and on the right side I have the Luxe Precise Shader number 238 from Zoeva. I can already tell you I have a hunch I'm going to love the Zoeva one much more, because this one happens to be one of my absolute favorite brushes in my collection. But let's give everyone a fair chance, shall we? Let's go with the M brush, and I'm just going to apply one of the topper shades in the middle as my inner corner highlight. Just popping that here into the very inner part of my eye. This brush is okay, but it is a bit, it's poking my eyes a little bit, like the bristles are a bit hard. So it's not my favorite. Taking that a bit on the lower part. Going into the same eyeshadow with the Zoeva brush. Yeah, I like my Zoeva brush so much better. This one still pokes me a little bit, by the way, but much less, and it's just a tiny bit more precise, I feel like, because of the shape. Do you see what a beautiful shape this has? Love it. For my lower lash line, I am going to consequentially go into the two blue shades and apply them next to each other. The deeper blue obviously towards the outer corner. And then blend it together with the rest. Going into the somewhat lighter blue and applying that next to it. Let's repeat the process on my right eye with the Zoeva brush. This brush is super tiny and it fits into like the smallest nooks and crannies of your eye. It's amazing. The only thing this brush struggles with is I can't really blend eyeshadow with it. It's super tiny. So I'm going to go back with the blending type of brush and just blend a bit around. Alright, you guys, the eyeshadow is done. I'm going to finish the rest of my eye makeup, my face makeup, and I'll be back to give you my final thoughts, which are not going to be very shocking. I already think you know where this is going. So, look is finished and I'm here to give you my final thoughts, and I think the biggest conclusion we can draw from this video is do not underestimate Zoeva brushes. They are a worthy contender. When it boils down to the result, how do these eye looks turn out? They turn out the same. You know, I can see a difference. I can say that this side is better blended than this side, or that anything works better with the Luxe brushes compared to the Zoeva brushes. Is there a difference in their quality? Absolutely. If I have to rank them, by the way, I would definitely rank them Sonia G, followed by M brush, followed by Zoeva. So the Sonia G brushes even outperform the M brushes in terms of how incredibly soft they are. Yes, the quality of the goat hairs on the Sonia G brushes is spectacular. The Zoeva brush is just a little bit rougher around the edges. It's not like they're going to hurt your eyeballs, but when you compare how this brush feels up against this brush, you will feel the difference. You will feel it. And the next thing, of course, is the shapes. For instance, let's compare the two shader brushes, because I feel like the difference there is the biggest. I have never seen a shader brush quite shaped like the Sonia G brush. And what makes the Sonia G brush so incredibly special is that it's not just a shader brush, but because of its shape, it can also blend very strategically. You can also apply eyeshadow into the inner corners, into the outer corners. You can blend on your lower lash line. You can reach easily on your lower lash line just because of how tapered this eyeshadow brush is compared to the simple Zoeva brush, which is just a shader, just a standard shader brush. So there's a little bit more thought, and if you have, you know, I don't know, mass-produced cars versus cars that are produced for people with special requirements, that would be the difference between these brushes in terms of how they are designed. But let's go back to the main question. Do they really perform that differently? I don't think so. I'm sorry, call me a plebeian, call me someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. When it comes down to the final result, I don't really see the difference. So if you're someone who is on a budget or who is really curious about the more luxe brushes but you can't really afford them, rest assured you're just fine with your Zoeva brushes. If you have the budget and you would like to have the more luxe experience and the more, you know, jazzed designs of brushes, definitely try a couple of the luxe brushes. But Don't expect that the results are going to be so dramatically different that you are going to wake up from not being able to do your makeup to suddenly being a professional blender of eyeshadow. That's just not going to happen. And another point I want to make is, I think when it comes to brushes, a lot has to do with the quality of the eyeshadows. A good quality eyeshadow you can probably make work with a cheap brush. However, a cheap, crappy eyeshadow, you can throw the most luxurious brush at it and you will still not be able to achieve a good result with it because it's just a crappy eyeshadow. Two clear advantages of luxe brushes that I'm not going to focus on too much because in my experience they don't really contribute that much to the performance of the brushes is clearly luxury brushes are more aesthetically pleasing to look at. They are made with so much more, attention to detail, and their handles are, slightly more ergonomic for you to hold. But like I said, I don't want to focus too much on that because in my personal experience it makes very little difference to the final result. This is definitely not a video that I'm making in defense of Zoeva brushes versus luxury brushes, but I just wanted to let all of you know who are unsure whether you should invest in luxurious brushes because you think they're going to up your eyeshadow game. I don't think. If you are already good at doing eyeshadow, I don't think they're going to up your game. I think they're just going to up your experience. Thank you so much for watching. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts because I know a lot of you around here are fans, die-hard fans of luxury brushes. Let me know if I'm missing some of them in my collection because I would be willing, like I said, to invest in brushes that are a little bit more special in terms of their shape. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!